Hey everyone, welcome back to DDJ's Inferno, the weekly show where I talk about issues relevant to men, gynocentrism, and feminism. And this is the welcome back show. Obviously, this one is not being streamed live. Normally, I stream my show on twitch.tv/misandry today, and then I upload it to YouTube. This particular show is going to be pre-recorded just as kind of an inaugural show and to kind of let people know that I'm back. Typically, I run this show on Sundays. Usually, I'm looking right now at bringing it back at 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time or 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Typically, the show runs about an hour or so as far as the conversation portion with the guest, and then we open it up to the live audience for Q&A so that they can ask any questions of the guest or myself that they want. Typically, we also have options if you're on twitch.tv or you are on a desktop that you can earn what's called Bukkake choke slams throughout the show, where you can redeem those for questions that get pre-recorded as well. However, there are some issues with those currently, so we're going to just be doing, when you do your questions on the show, for those who are unaware, just put question in caps and brackets and then direct it to either myself or the guest, and then you type out your question. Also understand that multi-part questions typically are not... they're a lot harder to answer because we're pulling the questions from the chat. So try to keep your question as a one-part question. Then later on, you can ask a follow-up based on the answer of that question. That's typically not a problem. Also, one of the things that helps me out as far as my channel is concerned is if you have Amazon Prime. If you subscribe to my channel with Amazon Prime, it benefits me and it costs you nothing. So if you support the channel, if you want to financially support the channel, I get half of whatever the typical low-level subscription is. I think it's like $2.50 or something per subscription. If you want to support the channel, this is one way you can do that without having to spend any extra money out of pocket. Also, if you want to find me, in addition to uploading my videos to YouTube, I also mirror all my content on Bitchute.com. I am present on Minds, as well as Gab.ai, and of course my website at misandrytoday.com. When this video gets uploaded, all those links will be in the description, so you can feel free to follow me there. In addition, I like to do a deep dive on my show. Again, this is just for the people that are relatively new to DDJ's Inferno. I like to do a deep dive on my show with a particular guest. Like I said, usually have like an hour conversation with them. If you want to be on the show, if you have something interesting that you want to talk about, feel free to reach out to me via email at misandry.happens@gmail.com. You can also direct message me on gab.ai or at minds.com. In addition to that, there's a contact form on my website at misandrytoday.com. You can reach out to me there as well. So if one method doesn't work, feel free to reach out to me in any of these other methods. Now, typically, I do get a lot of email, so sometimes it can take up to a week for me to get back to you. Don't feel frustrated about it. And then if you are interested in having me do a live stream with you or to, come on your podcast or things like that, I'm totally okay with that. However, my life is too busy, so I cannot do last minute invites. So, I need usually between, 3 days and a week lead time just to get an idea to make sure that I've got that time blocked out. So just, again, it's no disrespect against a lot of YouTubers who like to do this sort of thing and, want to be able to put these podcasts together last minute. Unfortunately, my life is too busy and I can't participate with that. And then, of course, feel free to check out my sponsor, The Dollhouse. They do fantastic work, and Phil from the Dollhouse is fantastic. And then, of course, if you look on the upper left-hand side of your screen, you'll see my book, which was an Amazon bestseller, The Feminist Lie. It was never about equality. I'm pretty proud of the book in that even though I've had a lot of positive reviews, those people who have been critical of the book have never challenged me on any of the facts. So I did a pretty good job fact checking, apparently. And, So check out the book if you feel like you want to. And occasionally Amazon will put that on sale. So my hashtag shill alerts are now done. I want to introduce today's guest. His name is Michael Combs. And Michael, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, I've been an art director or chief technical officer for a very long time. I basically have been a product. I'm a third generation of divorce rape culture in this country, and my children are the fourth. And I've always wanted to do something for years. And when I saw the Supreme Court come down in 2016 for same-sex marriage, I said, that's it. That's the death knell. That's the bell. That's the bell that's going to sound the inevitability of equal shared parenting. And it's just a matter of time. And for me, my grandfather killed himself over divorce. My father, it destroyed him. My mother was a huge parental alienator. For her, it was literally all about money. It was about cash and prizes. It was about control and power, and about winning. And what's a bigger prize than your kids? Right?
Exactly. And so you basically, what you're saying then is that you're the product of 3 generations of divorce. And are you married or are you divorced?
I am divorced. I was married for almost 20 years. I think the fundamental problem was I am from Texas and Hawaii, both of them. My family, I have 2 big families, one in Hawaii and one in Texas. And when I went to college in Texas, I got married, and I said I would not get married to you because I have a high chance of being divorced. And I didn't know all the statistics. I just knew a lot of them. And I have multiple master's degrees and the whole bit. I have like 5 or 6 degrees. I just don't even bother to care anymore.
Okay.
But I wouldn't get married if I told her, I was like, I'm not getting married to you unless you promise that we have a good divorce, we're going to go 50-50. Because in the state of Texas, and basically at that time, almost every state, now it's 45 states. Kentucky just went maybe a month ago, where it's the first ever real presumption in this country of 50-50. But I told her, look, I'm not doing this unless you promise, because I can't sign a contract saying, I had lawyers back then. You cannot sign a contract saying we're going to guarantee shared custody. Oh no, that's unconscionable ridiculousness, and that's why marriage is ending.
Yeah, and those prenuptial agreements are getting overturned left and right. I mean, even Australia's
they're garbage. They're garbage.
Yeah. I know Australia's Supreme Court earlier this year, they actually turned over prenups all across the board. So yeah, it's ridiculous. Now, before we kind of take
Australia is so bad that they're actually doing. I was reading last week. I do research all the time, and my team does, and they are doing a full-blown review of their system, the first time in 40 years, their family court system. It's going to be due out in March of 2019 because it's so bad.
Right.
But anyway.
Well, we can talk about that a little bit later. Yeah. Let me ask you this. You said you have a research team. Tell me a little bit about what you're currently working on and kind of why you're here.
I'm working on 2 projects. One is called Cash and Prizes. It's really why marriage is ending. Marriage is ending for 2 reasons. It's cash and prizes, another thing called the happiness trap. Essentially, you ask yourself the question, why is it that divorce initiation back in 1950s were roughly on parity? And now, if you're a college-educated woman, you're going to initiate 90% of the time. That's not magic. That's the reality. If you're not college-educated.
Right. So when you say initiate, you mean filing the divorce itself? Correct.
Filing.
Okay, go on.
I mean, in my world, I'm in a world of highly educated people, and those are the ponds that I fish in. And so what that means is that you're setting yourself up for failure. And the problem in this country is that all our laws are meant for family court and juvenile court are meant to take care of people, but really enable them and incentivize them to pull the plug. So people that live mindful lives, like a Jordan Peterson kind of thing,
Right.
They're punished. If you live a mindful life, you're punished. And so the reason why men are walking away from marriage is that men, smart men, mindful people are not getting married. That's why it's ending. But back to the beginning of it is that you have a world where 50, 60, 70 years ago, initiation was near parity, and now it's 90% one direction. And if you're not educated, it's 80% one direction. Why is that? It obviously has to do with the divorce court system in our country, and also a concept called the happiness trap. You can Google it. There's some videos on it. They're not very well done videos, but I'm a big psych person. I have a lot of psych in my background. And what the happiness trap basically is in the late 60s, early 70s, there was a psych construct called cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. Right. You've heard of it. It says basically if you're one derivation outside that mean of a bell curve, there's something wrong with you, there's something broken inside of you if you're here on. And so what ends up happening is that if you're not self-actualized or happy, something's broken. Right. So you need to figure out how to do that. So what waves of counselors have done is told people, oh, you ought to leave. You ought to do all this. You owe it to yourself. And
in other words, what you're saying, let's kind of stop on there for a second.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that they have put that CBT has put, and again, to put this in kind of layman's terms, they have, using the happiness trap theory, they have basically said, if the individual in the relationship is not happy, you should self-destruct the relationship and focus on your own personal gratification.
And so what happens with CBT, what happens with CBT is that when you follow these people, I'm a big data person. I made a lot of my fortune on data and analysis on web trends and things like that. And so what happens is you follow these people over 20 and 30 years, whether you had OCD, whether you had multiple personality or dissociative disorder or whatever you had. The people that followed CBT in that model all had drastically lower life outcomes. I'm a big life outcome person. So there's a guy in Australia who, the counseling world's different, and they came up with a thing called acceptance commitment therapy model. It's called ACT. And so ACT says you need to be living a mindful life. Your problem is that we live through evolution, and we go through evolution for, tens of thousands of years or whatever it is. And what you do as a human is you're looking at the 1% of what is wrong, and you obsess on the 1%. And I explain it to where, let's say that you go on vacation and you go to Malibu Beach, you fly across the country, you get in the convertible and you're driving, and you go sit and you get to watch the sun go down over the Pacific Coast Highway. And you're going, and one person's going, oh, wow, look at this beautiful sunset. It's so wonderful. It's marvelous. And the other partner over here is going, I can't stop obsessing over a little bug in the windshield. I cannot obsess it. I cannot stop. And so for ACD, for ACT, the point is you need to stop focusing on what is wrong and focus on what is right to live a mindful life. Because at the end of the day, if you fall into the trap of always chasing happiness, you're going to happiness is the very thing that always eludes you. That's the problem. Right. And so I'll go off into a million directions because I have a lot of research going back and forth, but it reminds me of what my father has always told me. He's 70 some odd years, and he has told me for years and years and years, there are waves of women in their mid 40s and up. I mean, just mountains of them that are broke. They've been divorced multiple times, and all they're doing is looking for a landing pad. And I've done a lot of research, and what happens is that a bunch of women, if 90% of the ones initiating and they're pulling the plug, what happens to them is that you go and look at a grocery store or Starbucks. And I was challenged by a woman who writes the New York Times about a year ago and said, I should really believe this, that alimony and breadwinning children are child support, high child support orders, and then equity states that give basically 70 or 80% of money away to the woman just because of the fact that they're a woman, is that these women burn up all their money. When the alimony runs out or the child support runs out or both, they have sabotaged their life outcome. Because think about it, you get married in your 30s or whatever it is, you're in your 30s, you have children, you get divorced in your 30s or early 40s, and you're ejecting out of your career. And by the time you get in your late 40s, you now face major age discrimination. So in other words, they compare them to lottery winners and people putting their feet up. And by the time you want to get back in there and make it happen, oh no, I'm in trouble, because I'm only making $2,000 a month. You're screwed. It's over.
And let me interject something in there too. I think it's important is that, I think that this idea of the happiness trap and, feminism selling these women a lie and incentivizing divorce, incentivizing the destruction of their relationships and their families and saying, look, you can get cash and prizes if you go away. I think that those things are extremely important because they hurt women too. And I think you hit the nail on the head in the idea that these women basically after the party stops, after these women hit the wall, after they become invisible to men because their best years of their lives are gone, they're now alone. They're now the financial outcomes are less. They're having lots of other problems, all throughout their life, both psychologically, financially, emotionally, and even socially. But let's kind of jump to something a little bit different here because I want to touch on a few things. A lot of the things that you've brought up, I think, are extremely important issues, and they're each one of them, I think, are worth a deep dive.
Each one are fascinating. I mean, the deep dives on fertility and how women face, they hit 30 and any man will do, and then it sets them up for a divorce and it destroys those children. How men at 18 should be getting vasectomies because in places like Chicago, 80% of African American or lower socioeconomic men are ending up in prison. That has to do with the triangle trade and the new Jim Crow. It really has to do with child support. And I'm doing another documentary called Third Party Baby, where I'm talking to all these fertility clinics and plastic bag babies and things like that, and third party babies, with gestational carriers. And this is a real deal, man. If you are mindful, you need to not get married and you need to have a third party child, whether you're a man or a woman. I'm not anti-woman. I love women. I just think that you face a trap as a woman in this country because you're being told you can have it all. And you know what? Have it all. Do it. Please do. But you need to freeze your eggs at 20 or 20 before 25 so that you have insurance.
Yeah. And I think that the other piece of that is that, feminism tells these women that they can have it all, but they don't tell them that there's a price to pay. They don't tell them there's consequences. But let's switch to a different.
It's Warren Farrell's the toll road of high salary. So what they don't tell you about is the toll road of high salary and male disposability. You want to make that high salary. That's great. You want to work 80 hours a week. That's great. Please go do it. Pay taxes, make all that happen. But know that it's a toll road. It's a toll road.
Exactly.
Okay, switch gears.
So,
sorry.
Yeah, so we're going to switch gears a little bit. So how did you discover me? Talk about that path a little bit and, some of what you've been doing as far as the path there.
We've been doing research for really 2 years and filming for over a year. My team, I have a lot of people and we fly around the country and some places of Western Europe and Japan. Haven't bothered to go to Australia because it's just a long way to get there. And we've been researching and digging through journals and digging through countless stuff and came across your book on Amazon and somebody handed it to me and I rolled my eyes and said, "Are you kidding me? You've got to be joking." It's like, they just told me, tear the cover off, get on a plane and go read it. And I was like, man, this is spot on. This is really close. And I was like, okay, I told my team, we're going to spend a month tearing it apart and see if we can shoot it down. Couldn't shoot any of it down. I don't like the fact you don't leave end notes. That's irritating. But Warren's great. Warren Farrell's great about doing end notes. It's very helpful.
Well, I specifically didn't do a bibliography to make feminists work harder. So.
Oh, there you go. Well, you made my life hard, man.
There you go. No pun intended.
But that's where I found it. And it's so spot on the Duluth model. It's so spot on domestic violence. It is really spot on. And if anything, when I read it, it's that and it's a little bit worse. It's actually a little bit worse. You probably toned it down some. And
I did.
I think that for a lot of people, you have to tone it down because they just don't believe it. But when you see people not getting married, like when I was in college, I'm in my mid 40s. I got married, I think, when I was 21 or 22, and that was the average time men got married. And now it's 29, and according to the census for 2010. And 2020, those numbers won't come out till 21, 22, and they're projecting 33, 35. But if you look, if you are 30 years old, your chances of getting married are 20%. Once you hit 35, your chances of marrying 5%. So what that effectively means is that it's the end of marriage. We're basically becoming herbivores. I have an interview scheduled for a Japanese woman that's going to talk about herbivore men, and it's fascinating about the male disposability and how people are walking away.
Now, we've been talking a lot of jargon in the interview so far. Talk to me a little bit about what herbivore men really are. So for those people who don't know.
Yeah. So the problem is that no Western person has really done a really good interview of what a herbivore man is. And herbivore men are grass eaters. They're called grass eaters in Japanese, as opposed to being meat eaters, meaning a man is going to have organic sex with a woman, and that's the way it should be. Well, the problem in Japanese society is that, the average worker works 12 hours a day, 6 days a week to give their money to their wives, and they get very little money. And then when they have children, the sex kind of dries up statistically. And what happens for them is that she files for divorce because, of course, she does, because it's statistics, right? And he ends up paying alimony, child support, and settlement because, she can't support herself. Oh, God, no, she doesn't have a college degree. She can't make that happen. Come on. I mean, I'm being facetious here. But what ends up happening is that he's destitute. And, oh, by the way, he becomes a wage slave until he has to retire. And so what these men are doing is they see their fathers doing this. Like, this is ridiculous. I'm just going to work part-time or work for $30,000 a year and get a roommate or two. And I'm going to work for 30 and I'm going to come out ahead because I'm not going to be exploited.
Right. And just to kind of underscore what you've been saying, too, for those that don't realize, Japan has adopted feminism. They adopted feminism. And technically, in a lot of ways, Japan is probably the closest thing that the world has to an ethno-state, in that, all these native Japanese people are, the vast majority of people living in Japan. And is their birth rate dying as a result of this? I mean, what's going on with their population?
It's actually cratered. I think they actually hit their peak in population about a year or two ago. They're due to half over the next 50 years. When I was there, I've been there several times. You see empty playgrounds. You see all these places on the edge of town. I'm not just talking about the nuclear zone and things like that. I mean, I mainly traveled south, like Tokyo South is where I went, for two weeks. And you go to hospital wards that are empty. You go to playgrounds that are rusty. And people don't understand about Japan. I love Japan because it's like Switzerland. It is clean and immaculate. These people are amazing. There's no trash on the ground anywhere. I mean, these people are really anal. They're really on top of it. And you go and you see rusted playgrounds. You're like, what is that about? Right. And what's going on is that they're closing hospital wards and schools and playgrounds because they're not having any more kids. They're basically, I think they're about 127 million. They're due in 50 years to be 85 million. That's catastrophic.
Now, it's also my understanding, too, that even some of the rural towns in Japan are becoming ghost towns because of the population crisis.
Oh, yeah. You have people walking away from homes. It's crazy. It's almost like that Oklahoma book. What is the name of that book where they all leave Oklahoma in the Dust Bowl and they go to California? Right. I forget the name of it, but
I forget the name as well, but I know which one you're talking about. Yeah. So, but I guess, my whole thing is like, oh my God. I mean, you've got these ghost towns that are there, or these soon to be ghost towns. You have no population. I mean, congratulations. You have your ethno state and there's nothing there.
There's nothing there, and they won't import people. And so you're wondering what the hell is going on. Right. I mean, it's like they can't connect the dots. It's like they look at the sky and all they see is stars, and they can't connect the constellations. They can't connect the dots. And it's really sad. It's really sad for me and my own and my family. I'm protecting my own, and I'm protecting my family from this entire divorce rape culture. I'm done. Right. If my children get a marriage, I'm like, that's fine. You're on your own. I'm not doing that, because marriage is asymmetric warfare designed against men. And if you happen to be in a more equitable state like Colorado, my daughter will be divorce raped too. If she gets married to somebody, they'll go after her in the exact same manner.
Well, and when I was a paralegal too, one of the things I noticed is that, the feminist saturated family court system will treat strong, like truly strong and independent women or women who are not
Yes.
victims. They will treat them just as badly as they'll
And
treat
here's
men.
why. I'll tell you why. One of my team members is a victim of divorce rape culture. So in the past, if you're a woman and you lost your custody, it usually had to do with political corruption. So I'll give a really big overview. In
Sure.
45 states, if you're a man, you're going to be guaranteed 4 days a month. If you're a woman, you're going to be guaranteed 27 days a month. And if you're a homosexual, you're going to be guaranteed 15 days a month with your children. Well, the only way around that to end up screw the woman in a divorce is either to engage in political corruption. So in Texas, your law firm would give $300,000 to the judge, and that would be that. In Colorado, you can give gifts of $150 a day to a judge. I'm sure that never, ever influences the outcome. Ever.
Right.
I'm a jerk, but it's true. And I have a member of my team where she got screwed because her husband was the number one aide to the governor of Colorado. And,
Jesus.
And she got screwed. I mean, unbelievably, divorce rape cultured. And she believes it's because you have some of these older women that's on the bar. And for those that don't know, lawyers work their butt off. It's a stupid career. You should become a web developer. Don't make money to do on the web. Don't be a doctor. Don't be a lawyer. You're wasting your life and time. You really are, because you're going to work 80 or 100 hours a week. As a web developer, you can work 35 hours a week and make over 100 grand. You're good to go. Not lawyers. You read your butt off, you burn your candle, and you see these women or men that are judges and they're 50 years old and they look 70. I mean, most of them their eyes get blown out, they have retina detachment and things like that. But what she says to me is, well, what's really going on is that you have these women that have never been very attractive in their lives, and they become a lawyer. And they become a lawyer and they become a judge and work that system and work their butt off 80 hours a week. And then you march in there as an attractive female in your 40s or 30s, and they hate you. And you're smart, and you're a killer. You're 120 IQ. You make money. They resent you.
Right.
And it's their way to get you back.
Now, when it comes to divorce rape culture, when you were doing the research for your documentary Cash and Prizes, what are the outcomes that you're seeing for a lot of men who end up going through the divorce system?
Oh, you're screwed. I've always known this. My father told me as a small child for years and years about it. I've known about it. The very reason my family has been in either Hawaii, one half in Hawaii, or one half in Texas for 200 years. I grew up kind of in both, and I physically left Texas because I know the reality of it. And I moved to Colorado, it's a 50-50 state. It's been that way since the mid 80s for life outcome. And that's why I moved here. And the reality is that if you're a man, it doesn't matter. You're going to get 27 days. And in 9 states are separate property states.
You mean
So
4 days?
Yeah, you get 4 days, sorry. But in 9 states are separate property states. The rest of the states and Guam or Puerto Rico are all going to be equity kind of states. What that means is that the judge will give up to 85%. And you may not believe it, but you do believe it. You're going to pick up a video and look at it. There are so many men that get wiped out. And you ask people in their 40s and up about how marriage is ending. It's gone from 75% to 50% for X. Y's millennials are 25% and Z's are supposed to be 15%. And you ask millennials why they're not getting married. And millennials have got a bad rap. Originally, I hated millennials. I hated employing them and dealing with them. A high-powered individual, and it irritated me. Well, the secret about millennials is that they get it. They're not into consumerism. They don't buy big homes. They don't buy Gucci bags. They don't buy all this crap. But the thing they also don't do is they don't get involved in long-term relationships. They do not get married. And you ask them why. I bring them into my studio. I have groups of 15 I interview. And what they say is that they don't want to be exploited. And marriage is how you get exploited. Bottom line, it's how you get exploited. But you ask the question, what happens to men is that men are screwed. And back to equity states is that they're going to take 85%. In states of separate property, what will happen is that, say you had a CD, bank or stock or whatever it is, a bank note, and you save $50,000 and you have 2% interest or 1% interest and it compiles back onto that note. If you're married, past 1 day, 10 days, whatever is the law in your state, because it compiled back into that note of $50,000, the moment she gets a divorce, she applies because 90% of the time it's going to be her. You're going to be giving her a check for $25,002.
Right.
And that's your money you made. And so it has the problem of,
and that's post-tax after the penalty for taking it out early.
Yeah. Oh, all of it. The fundamental problem with our system is that it rewards people for not leading mindful lives. It treats people as victims. And that all sounds great when you're 19, 20, when I came to work on a horse and a bowler hat, where women couldn't get a job, they couldn't get educated, right? But that's really different now. 65% of college graduates are women. 60% of graduate school graduates are women. The majority of people leaving law school, leaving med school are women, right? This is the new world. The glass ceiling is gone, but the glass cellar, the Warren Farrell's glass cellar, is alive and well. Men occupy 24 of the top 25 death professions. This is a real deal. And so for a man, the existential problem for a man.
Let's stop there for a second. When you say death professions, can you go into a little bit of detail on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the best jobs to get is to be an electrician. That's the most dangerous job to be. I mean, I think 22 was police officer, things like that. Death professions are things like, oil rig workers are very dangerous jobs. I mean, smelly, dangerous jobs.
So basically what we're talking about is jobs where the person who's working, the employee, is most likely to die.
Yes, most likely to die. Because at the end of the day is that Warren is right. Women are smarter emotionally and they choose work-life balance. Men, the issue for men is that to find a mate and to have children, it's about what you can provide and what you bring to the table. And so what happens for men is, this is the existential hard for men that men don't see. You can't see it unless you're a reader or unless your father or friends clue you in on this. This is the great secret in life, is that you're going to find somebody, you're going to work your butt off to make it happen, and you're going to get married, and then she's going to want more stuff. And that's fine. It's the game, I guess. But you have a child and you realize, oh my God, I need a lot more money, a lot harder. So you're going to start working. You're going to take a second job or a third job. And by the way, I fly all around the country a lot, and I talk to Lyft drivers and Uber drivers and taxi drivers. And this is the issue. There are very few women that drive taxis. It's a hard profession. And so for Warren, what Warren Farrell talks about is that toll road of high pay. But what ends up happening for men is that you're going to get married, you're going to have a child, and you're going to start making money, or she's going to leave you, by the way, right? And you feel that in the argument. She's going to leave. And men aren't leavers. Men don't like to quit. It's something inside men. I want to stick through it. So what ends up happening is that you're working 60, 80 hours a week, and then inevitably she files. Because the grass is greener. I can do better with somebody else. But, the pro tip, here's the pro tip for DDJ, right? Here's the pro tip. The grass is not greener. It's actually worse on the other side. That's the pro tip. That's the inside tip.
Yep.
But what ends up happening is you march into divorce court. And the sad part is, because you're now earning $60,000, because the average single filer makes $35,000 according to the IRS in 2015. So now you're working 2 jobs or even 3 to make this happen. This is real. And you march into divorce court, and in I think 48 states, what's going to end up happening to you is that you think, oh, I'm going to work this for 5 years and get this done. No. Now that we're going to keep everything status quo and make sure that the life of those children maintain exactly the same, it's not a concept of we're going to have shared sacrifice, right? Where sure, her lifestyle goes down and your lifestyle goes down. Oh no, that's not how divorce court works, bro. Not at all. That's the problem, is that they're going to make you work that for the rest of your life. The rest of your life, or until your kids graduate. So you're going to have alimony, you're going to have child support, 216 easy monthly payments. And here's the hard for you. If you're a middle class dude, you're going to pay $2,000 a month in child support, not to mention the co-pays, the soccer, the whatever it is. That's nearly $500,000 in child support alone. If you're poor, you're going to be paying $500 to $1,000 a month. That's about $100,000 or plus, right? If you're in the ghetto, you're going to borrow 20%. That's dangerous. That's what's going to ruin your life is child support. But anyway, but that's the issue. So you ask yourself the question, why is it that men live 8 years, fewer years than women? You ask yourself that question. You ask Warren that question. And what they'll talk about is a thing called the cloister study. It's in German. I had to put it through a translator and read it, and then go find me a German speaker that can speak English really well, which there are a lot, actually. I love the modern world. And it takes place in Austria. And so if you want to run a controlled study over time, how are you going to do that? Well, it turns out you have these nuns, you have these monks, and they live from 18 till 80, 90, and they wake up at the same time, they pray at the same time, they eat the same food, they work the same amount of work, whether you're a man or woman, and they all die about the same time, which is fascinating. So
wait a minute. Wait a minute. Yeah. Let's go back. So what you're saying is that people who live in the Western world, who live a Western lifestyle, the guy goes and he works all the time. The wife or the woman, she will, practice her work-life balance. He'll die before her. However, in this study, these people were living the same type of lifestyle. They had the same types of things going on, and they were dying around the same time.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Go on.
Testosterone. Right.
It's not testosterone and risky behavior. Here's the newsflash. Here's the big deal. So what happens is that in our society, you have to work longer to keep a woman. You have to work harder. And then most of these marriages are getting exploded, and you end up in divorce court, and you're not going to work. You're not going to burn both ends of the candle for 5 years. You're going to burn for 30 and 40 years. I interviewed Steve Hittner, the man who killed alimony in Massachusetts. Now Massachusetts, right, is you have to become a ward of the state. You have to prove need for alimony. And when you retire, you don't get it, right? So you're not going to get alimony in Massachusetts unless you become a ward of the state. You know how hard it is to become a ward of the state? It's nearly impossible, okay? Yeah. But then you have the right to retire, right? Because why is it fair for someone to take half your assets and then, 60% of your net earning? I mean, of your net, right? Because that's the game. What's going on? There's a gross and net. Gross is your total, and net's your after taxes. Right. Here's the inside tip: you're going to lose 60% of your income when you get a divorce, and you're going to end up with in most states, you're going to end up with most legal issues, with most of the legal bill, because the first step after a divorce is bankruptcy court. It wasn't for me because I live a mindful life. But you're having to control a crashing plane. I have no doubt about that. You're controlling a crashing plane.
And in my over a decade of working in family law, I can confirm that. I mean, that usually the second place that you go after your divorce is done as a man is bankruptcy court. And even then, they've changed the bankruptcy laws in the last 10 years so that the majority of the debt that you normally could discharge, you can't get out from under it. So no matter where you go as a man, you're done. No matter where you go as a man, you're backed into a corner. You're painted into the corner because you got married, because you got divorced.
Because you got married. So the other issue is that you're working harder to keep this woman. You get a divorce, and then they force you to keep working forever, because the issue is that they want to talk about status quo for children, but they don't talk about the child support hustle at all. Here's the child support hustle really quickly. If she makes $40,000 a year and you make $40,000 a year, that's about average. She's going to walk away after child support, with child support's tax-free money, okay, and after she pays health insurance, okay. So the issue is health insurance, taxes, state and local taxes, the whole bit. She's going to walk away with about $3,600 a month, and he's going to walk away with under $1,000. And if I told you it's lower than that, you wouldn't believe me, but it's true. Now you end up in a world where you mandated 27 days for her and 4 days for him. That's the fundamental problem. The fundamental problem is, how is he going to find an apartment, a car, or a way to get to work and have bedrooms for those children? Because in states like Maryland and things like that, if you have a boy and a girl, they have to have 2 different rooms. So you need to have 3 rooms, one for yourself, one for the boy, and one for the girl. How are you going to do that with $1,000 a day for the average American? The answer is you're not. You're going to have to walk away.
Well,
and that's the hustle.
And a lot of landlords, they won't even rent to you or let you sign a lease unless you can demonstrate that after taxes and after your expenses that you're making 3 times the amount of the rent. So after child support, you can't do that. So now all of a sudden you're living in a slum.
yes, you live in a slum, you go live with back your parents and the whole bit. But if you don't have parents, you're screwed. That's why homelessness is so high. If you look at the statistics on homelessness, it's staggering. 80 to 85% of people that hard sleep or they're actually chronically homeless are men, right? And we don't care. And the other issue is that when you look at HUD and their studies say 53% of homeless come from relationship breakdown. So here's a translation. Here's a translation. Sure. I used to work with homeless for about 10 years of my life when I was in my 20s, or 5 or 8 years, right? And we always said, don't give money to homeless people because you're just going to enable them. You should give money to the shelter. Well, as I get older, I'm like, that doesn't sound right to me. But then, wait a second. You think about it, and it's like, well, change does come from within. And why are there no homeless people in Japan? Because Japan doesn't have a Judeo-Christian Islamic background of charity. And so it turns out if you don't give money to people, they won't become homeless. And they'll learn they're going to have to work harder. And that sounds really insensitive.
So what you're saying is, wait a minute. So what you're saying is that in Japan, there is no entitlement attitude. So in other words, you have to work in order to maintain a standard of living. And if you are homeless,
there's a government safety net, but you go out and hold the sign, no one's going to give you money. No one will give you money.
Right.
No one.
Okay.
No one.
So basically what you're saying is that charity culture is enabling people to get entitled to make sure that they don't have to work.
Right. And you go along and you're like, well, you want my change? Well, change comes from within. There's a moment in The Fisher King where Robin Williams is sitting there saying, you give me money because I'm the moral buoy. I'm the moral beacon that says you need to kiss your boss's ass or you can become homeless like me. And in essence, that's true because something inside you compels to give because you feel sorry for that person. But what's not said is that every dollar I give you, right, is every dollar I give you, I'm raising my own taxes because you're not working at Wendy's or McDonald's or Home Depot. You're not paying the system. So I'm actually hurting myself by giving that person money. But then I get older and I go, what's really going on? Why are so many homeless? And so I start asking all these questions. I stop my car, I get out and talk to all these people. And I'm all good. And it's not the evils of capitalism because I've interviewed Stephen Baskerville and he's like, it's not the evils of capitalism, Michael. It's the family court, dude. Go ask them. And it turns out that 65% of these people holding signs that are men are homeless because of the family court or the juvenile court, because half of our kids are born outside of wedlock. So it's family court and juvenile court. Okay.
So paternity court, basically.
Yes, exactly.
Paternity, yeah.
They're there because of that. And so, and the hard thing is that the average man, I think, lives 78 in this country. And in Europe, it's a little higher because of you have access to lifelong access to healthcare.
Right.
And that's part of that. But you ask yourself, how long does a homeless man live? 62 years. 62 years old. So you're basically killing them because it's a harder lifestyle. They're living on the street and they're dying. So you ask yourself why men live 8 years shorter. It's homelessness. It's the family court. And by the way, when you look at the numbers, I gave a study to you about suicide and divorce.
Yeah, let me put that up on the screen. Yeah. Go ahead and start. Keep talking. Go ahead.
I'll just talk while you have it on the screen.
Okay.
Is that 39 men a week kill themselves as a direct result from divorce. This doesn't include juvenile court. It doesn't include the studies that were mentioned. I have several statisticians, and we go back and forth. And this study, there's two studies. They have a 0.002 flaw rate.
Before you dig into that, let me kind of go over this study a little bit. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of go over the abstract for the audience, just to kind of give them an idea of what this study is about. This study is entitled Marital Status and Suicide in the National Longitudinal Mortality Study. The abstract states, objectives. The purpose of the study was to examine the effect of marital status on the risk of suicide, usually a large nationally representative sample. A related objective was to investigate the association between marital status and suicide by sex. Now let's go to the results and the conclusions. The results say, for the entire sample, higher risks of suicide were found in divorced, I'm sorry, for the entire sample, higher risks of suicide were found in divorced than in married persons. I guess that sentence didn't make sense. That's why it threw me off. Divorced and separated persons were over twice as likely to commit suicide as married persons. Being single or widowed had no significant effect on suicide risk. When data were stratified by sex, it was observed that the risk of suicide among divorced men was over twice that of married men. Among women, however, there were no statistically significant differentials in the risk of suicide by marital status categories. Marital status, and this is the conclusion portion, marital status, especially divorce, has the strong net effect on mortality from suicide, but among men. The study showed that in the, I can't even talk today, epidemiological, I'm just going to say research. Fine, I don't care. It's been that kind of day. Research on suicide, more accurate results would be obtained if samples were stratified on the basis of key demographic or social characteristics. The study further observed that failure to control for relevant socioeconomic variables or combining men and women in the same models could produce misleading results. So in other words, if you look at this study, again, the marital status and suicide in the National Longitudinal Mortality Study, you can hide the gender bias just by including men and women in the same category. So let's talk about that.
So here's the issue. When you talk to psychs, I'm a big proponent of psych. Okay, I'm a huge proponent. What they'll say is, well, women have more social structures where they can reach out, and it's a cry for help, and men don't. Because in divorce, men lose their children and they lose their social structures, and that's why they kill themselves. That is ridiculous. On some level, it's like 10% of it. Okay. The bottom line is you get child support hustled and you end up losing everything you have. And the best way to explain children is what Steve Jobs said. It's the most memorable quote by Walter Isaacson is that children are all your hopes and dreams. They are. So let me ask you a question. If you lose all your hopes and dreams, you're broke, you're caught in the new Jim Crow, living on the other side of the tracks because you're broke as all get out. You're tossed in and out of jail, right? The family court treats you like garbage. Nothing's equitable. Okay. You get to see your kids 4 days a month. And by the way, 7% of children are raised by stay-at-home moms and 3% by stay-at-home dads. I know countless stay-at-home dads that were stay-at-home and they got a divorce, they had to pay $2,000 a month and got to see their kids 4 days a month. Okay. When you lose all your hopes and dreams and you're forced into penury is a fancy old term for absolute poverty. Absolute poverty. You stand a very good chance of killing yourself. You stand a very good chance of being homeless and the whole bit. Of course you're going to kill yourself, dude. Even someone like me had moments of like, my life is over. I don't want to do this anymore. My kids' life outcomes are destroyed because of this person.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. I want to put something else up on the screen too. You were talking about
in the study, if you look at it, 1 second, it says 0.0049. So it's 39 men a week and 4 women a week. Okay. So the other issue is that suicide's drastically on the way up in the last 10, 15 years. It's
correct.
Drastically up. Why? Because the number of divorce actions and legal actions, because it's not just divorce, it's the continual legal actions, the coming back and milking the cow. Because in most states, the modification. The problem is that in most states, here's the secret. Your divorce isn't over the moment you sign the piece of paper. They keep coming back, and you as the man have to pay for it.
Well, and let me underscore that.
There's no punishment for her.
Yeah, let me underscore that. When a court case is over, let's say you and I get into a car accident and you sue me because I've destroyed your Beamer or your Mercedes or whatever you drive. Once you go to court and you get your judgment, that action is over with the exception of trying to enforce the judgment. Now, the jurisdiction of that case ends at that point. And you talk to any attorney and they say, yeah, once the case is over, the court's jurisdiction ends with as long as everybody follows whatever the court order says. So everything is done. The difference between suing somebody for a car accident or personal injury or a tort claim or violating a business contract, the difference between that and family law is that family law has what's called continuing jurisdiction. So once your divorce case is over, once your paternity action is filed and you have your divorce decree, you've got your parenting plan, you've got your child support order, whatever it is that you have, one of those things that's interesting about that is the jurisdiction of the court continues. So even if you move, even if you go somewhere else, that court maintains jurisdiction, which means that case, for all intents and purposes, remains active in the most basic of legal sense. Now, you still have to file a new petition, or you still may have to file a new summons and petition, but you don't get a new case number. You keep that case number. It stays live.
It goes on and on. I mean, you think you're out, but you're never out. It's like the Godfather. They keep pulling you back in. It's terrible.
Right. Let me jump to something else real quick too that's important, because while we were talking about suicide, I'm going to put this up on the screen. So what this is womenshealth.gov. Men die sooner than women, and everybody's like, well, because men work harder, because men's
why do men work harder?
Exactly.
Why do men work harder? Men work harder because their wives are going to leave them, and they get caught in divorce rape culture. They get caught in this child support system and the family court.
Yeah, so so what I've got on the screen here is I've got womenshealth.gov. Now this is run by the United States Department of Health and Human Services. As you can see from this website, okay, there's health and wellness, diseases and conditions, reproductive health. There's even a helpline. There's a toll-free helpline that is open from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday, that a woman can call and she can find out about her health. They even talk about urinary incontinence. They talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, good, tips for good health. Here's the top trending health topics: uterine fibroids, mental health, urinary incontinence, thyroid disease, pregnancy, HIV, AIDS, relationships and safety. Here, let's just click on this one for a second. Relationships and safety. All right. So now we go there, and it says every woman has a right to live her life free of violence. This is the whole Duluth model DV sort of thing. Yes. And again, you see on the left-hand side, I've highlighted domestic or intimate partner violence. Now, let's stop there for a second. Again, this is the Office on Women's Health, womenshealth.gov. Now, people talk about how there's no misandry, and about how feminism is about equality, and about how there's no war on men. Let's go to menshealth.gov and take a look at it. All right, so now I've got menshealth.gov on the screen. Now, I'm going to read this real basic. You can probably see it because it's in gray. It says, this site can't be reached because server DNS address could not be found. http://menshealth.gov. You know why? Because that website doesn't exist. Because the United States government doesn't give a shit about men, and because feminists who say that they want to fight about it. Exactly.
It's about male disposability.
And the idea here is that women who say that they want to fight for equality don't give a shit about men. It's about misandry, and it's about demonizing men for the benefit of women. If it was about true equality, legal equality or otherwise, well, guess what? In 1963, the last lack of equality went away when JFK signed the Equal Pay Act, which, by the way, everybody talks about the wage gap. I'm going to touch on that for a second. With the Equal Pay Act, it's against the law to do it. It's been against the law to do it since 1963. But to hear feminists tell it, oh, it's happening all the time today, it's all bullshit. Now, when it comes to men who are homeless, when it comes to men who end up, committing suicide, and they end up having all these horrible life outcomes as a result of the relationship breakdown, whether it's paternity, out of wedlock childbirth,
and then
or
your
kids
divorce. Are screwed too. So their life outcomes. Look up at life outcomes of single moms, and it's not that if we're living in an alternative universe where men had the kids 27 days, it'd probably be similar. But the issue is that look at the life outcome of those children. It's terrible. You're also damned them. What counselors told me when I talked about the happiness trap was that look at the life outcome of those kids. But by you pulling that plug for that money or for your supposed happiness, you're screwing your children to do the exact same thing for them and then your grandchildren as well.
Well, yeah, you create multi-generational cycles, and you create cycles of poverty, cycles of mental health, cycles of crime, and absolutely there. So my point though is that, as we demonize men, or as we elevate women at the expense of men, Men are dying. Like you said, men are dying of homelessness. They're dying of suicide, and they don't have any places they can go. Men
Correct.
can't go and talk about their mental health issue or the fact that prostate cancer happens just as often.
Well, the problem is the reason
does.
they can't is that they are punished for doing it. When you talk about vets
build on that
and
a little bit.
PTSDs, so another death profession are vets. I've interviewed vets and cops, and I have a cop that's retired who's going to tell me the skinny. He's going to go on camera and tell me the reality of it. Is that the cops hate all this domestic violence stuff because 70% of domestic violence is committed by women. DDJ, just put a link on that study, the Harvard study. There's that one. I sent him one a couple weeks ago. There's a woman in New Hampshire that's been doing it 40 years. It talks about how they don't promote the reality of domestic violence. But I don't want to diverse too much. And
I will say this too. I do have a guy on my Discord server who is an ex-cop, and he was actually when the Duluth model first came into fashion, his police department was one of the first police departments to enforce the Duluth model, and he talked about it. He said that the police gave all kinds of pushback against the feminists on the Duluth model because they were like, look, it violates your constitutional rights. It creates all these other problems. And so, we kind of talked about that in detail. And just again, is by way of...
Here's a secret that police, they don't tell you. So here's Baskerville's book, The New Politics of Sex. It's kind of like The Feminist Lie, but on a PhD version. It's a bit hard to read. This guy's dedicated his life for this. And I mean, he's written another book called Taken into Custody. It's the whole bit. And the police manuals say you need to ignore the damage done to men. Ignore it because he's the perpetrator. That's the Boston police manual, by the way. So and the other issue is that when the cops are called, whether it's Alexa or somebody else, someone's going to jail. Someone's leaving. And 9 times out of 10, it's not the man, which is really ironic because 70% of domestic violence is committed by women. What is going on? So what the cops will tell me is this. Cops and vets are representative of male disposability because they're like 95% male. Okay. And what happens for police, for cops is that they don't want they can't get marriage counseling. They can't get any counseling. They can't get diagnosed with PTSD because if they do any of that, they are ushered out. They're given shit assignments or they're basically pushed out of the department because they're a liability. And what they're telling me is that 90% of all cops are divorced. The ones that aren't divorced that are currently married, half of them are cheating. So here's what's going on. Here's the inside tip is that people have to cope. They have coping mechanisms. So cops usually are alcoholics, they're drug addicts, and they're sex addicts. And they tend to women can throw themselves at them. They work at clubs while they're off duty, or they'll hire prostitutes, and they have what's called love shacks. So like a REIT, a real estate investment trust, like Tramelco Properties or something like that. I don't know if the Tramelco does this or not. I just can't remember the name of them because I live in an apartment and God knows how long. Is that they will give police officers a free apartment, like an efficiency, because it helps them keep the place stable. And it's one more thing for help if they need help. Well, the cops will use this as a love shack and they'll text each other on what to use. And all they're doing is coping. But it's kind of an inside tip on that one. But the real issue is that as a cop, if you want to become an officer, you can't get any help. You can't get help for therapy. You can't get help to become mentally strong. You're working night shifts and your wife is angry at you. You can't go to marital counseling because the moment you do, you're fired. And oh, by the way, since you're a cop and you're working all this time, it guarantees you 27 days a month. Because how are you going to work that out? You're not. Oh, and by the way, because you got hit with a PTSD diagnosis, the court's going to say, oh, this man's a danger. He has a gun. He's a danger to his children. He's a danger. And so you'll be lucky to get your kids on supervised visits. You think I'm kidding? I'm not.
Well, and you'll lose your job.
Yeah, and you'll lose your job. The other secret is that you get hit by a silver bullet. A silver bullet is a false accusation. I ran across a study. They're starting to have some real issues in Colorado, trying to combat it. And I ran across this study God, what did it say? It said 74% of all accusations are blamed at men, and 71% of accusations come by women, and over half and most of the accusations, I can't remember that last statistic, but most of them are false. We can talk about that another time, but it talks about the statistical likelihood of pedophilia and abuse from fathers to children, but statistically, fathers are the most safe. So it's really odd how all that runs together. But maybe we can talk about that in another one, I guess.
Right,
and
right.
then go through all the data, and I can show it to you. It's really fascinating. It's all the lie. It's all the Hollywood promotion, and it has to do with money that they get.
Well, and here's the thing. You know, the feminist narrative is that you know, marriage is slavery, and you know, a woman loses her identity in marriage, and marriage is bad for the woman and bad for the kids.
But slavery is ending up at 60 years old broke as shit.
Yeah,
working at Starbucks. That's slavery.
Exactly. And in chapter 3 of my book, I actually compare and contrast the differences between intact families that practice traditional American family values and families, you know, of divorce or broken homes, you know, like out of wedlock births, those types of things. And what they have consistently found, what the professionals have consistently found, is that a household that is raising children where the biological mother and the biological father are in a relationship that practices traditional family values, whether married or not, the life outcomes of the family, the life outcomes of the father and the mother, as well as the children, are far better and far higher than they are when it comes to the broken homes or the homes created by feminism's war on marriage, men, and family values. So, you know, you see this, and again, it's like what you said. It's they bring this false narrative that men are supposedly, you know, the evil ones, and all men are rapists, and you know, the entire thing that's there. So that you get this false narrative, but the reality is, when you look at the hard science, it's 180 degrees from the feminist narrative.
If you look at, this is my favorite one for child abuse, because I was beaten by a stepfather or something fierce. One of the issues that affected my life was my mother left for cash and prizes and lifestyle and sold the children out to a man that was very violent. If you look at child maltreatment 2015, just look at child maltreatment 2015, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And you scroll down to table 4.5 on page 61, it talks all about it. Basically, 65% of all child abuse comes from single moms or their lovers. Very few comes from dad. If you talk about Warren Farrell and other things, I could grab it if I have a moment. I have to go dig it really quickly. It all talks about life outcomes. And the big issue is equity parenting, because it has to do with a veto power. So the scientific data is really clear. The research is super clear. And the laws that we have are lagging way behind. The question is why they lag way behind. But the real issue is life outcome for children is nearly on parity of those with an intact family. That's the secret. Now, the other secret is this, what I found fascinating. And life outcome for children of single moms is really low. There's a lot of reasons for that, but I don't think it's for women in general. But here's the inside tip, the pro tip. Here's a pro tip. Your pro tip is that single men that get the kids full time have the highest life outcome. They're like, why is that? Well, it's simple. Because women typically will get the kids 93% of the time in this country. And you could be you could be a prostitute in a brothel in the state of Texas and still get your kids 27 days a month. And that's not one case. That's countless cases. Countless cases. It's nearly impossible to lose your children as a woman in this country. In 45 states, it's nearly impossible. So you have to be this drug addict, this terrible human being to lose your children. So what happens is that the reason why men's life outcomes for children are so much higher for singles is that these men are willing to spend $200,000 or $300,000 or $500,000 to fight for their children, and they are invested. They're not letting go because they love their children more than they love themselves. It's like the Golda Meir quote: "If you love your children more than you hate each other, then you'll have peace." It's that kind of mentality, and that's why. And people don't want to talk about that. But the fundamental reason why all this happens is for money. It has to do with Social Security Title 4D and 4E. So for the state of Texas, for every dollar.
Well, let's dig into that next time, because we're running out of time a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what. I mean, again, one of the things that I really enjoy about talking with you, Michael, is that you are a wealth of knowledge and information. I mean, you've dedicated full-time 2 years of your life, doing all these things. So now with Cash and Prizes, if people want to support that documentary, what is the best way for them to support it?
I have a GoFundMe. It's Cash and Prizes Movie, or it's Cash and Prizes Movie, all spelled out, for Patreon, things like that. Okay. You can check out I've posted a couple interviews. I kind of go back and forth with my team on what we're doing. Not what we're doing, but the interviews we're posting or not posting. I've done about 20 interviews so far. We're aiming for 25 to 30. Then we're going to start shooting, probably in the winter. You can check out Solzhenitsyn Production. It's a mouthful. I understand it's a mouthful.
I'll put a link to it in the description of this video.
It has to do with this. I'm a big reader of master's degrees and the whole hoorah. There's a man named Alexander Solzhenitsyn. That's how you get his last name. I can't even spell it most of the time, to be honest. But I read two of his books that changed my life. One was the Life of Ivan Denisovich, or One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, and then the Gulag Archipelago, or the Archipelago. And it talks about a Stalinist system of evil. And he memorized everything he was going to do while he was in the Gulag. And then when he was released, he wrote them all down. The amount of discipline is wild. But his problem was this. What do I do on an existential level? Do I fight the injustice? Do I fight it? So I have one on Daddy Justice. It's amazing. It's a great interview with this guy. Do you fight it, or do you subvert it, or do you walk away? That's the issue. So for Solzhenitsyn, he's like, well, I may not be able to fight the Stalinist system in Russia, but you know what? What I can do as a Christian, and that was his perspective, what I can do as a Christian is the very least I can do is I can bear witness and tell people what has happened. And so the reason why we call our production company Solzhenitsyn Production is that we're bearing witness to this injustice. We may not be able to change it, but we're going to bear witness. And our documentaries are not going to be like The Cove, where we tell you dolphins are dying, or we're going to be Inconvenient Truth and tell you the world's heating up and well. No, the goal of this one is we're going to finish up, and you're going to go to cashandprizes.com or cashandprizesmovie.com, whatever it is we've bought, and you're going to put in your zip code. And then you're going to go in, and it's going to say that this is my state and local legislator, and here's my boilerplate language. If they get 3 to 5, they're going to push numbers. And then you're going to also go to your DC rep and senator and say, look, you need to reform Title 4D and stop funding 80/20. Stop funding 27 days to women and 4 days a month to men. Because after all, why is it in America, if you're a heterosexual woman, you get 27 days. If you're a heterosexual man, you get 4 days. And if you're LGBTQ, you get 15 days. Are we saying that the heterosexual woman is a better parent than the lesbian mom? Or the homosexual dad the better parent than the heterosexual dad? Are you kidding me? Is this the 1800s? I mean, I don't understand what's going on. And that's why men are walking away from marriage.
Yeah, and it's definitely misandry, and it's misandry against specifically, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, it's misandry against heterosexual men completely.
Yes, absolutely. It's unbelievable. And as a heterosexual man, I'm also doing third-party baby. And if you're a man over 18, you need to get a vasectomy because the pill is only 91% effective because she'll forget to take it. She won't maybe not take it on purpose, or she'll take antibiotic and she'll get pregnant. Okay. The other issue is that once your DNA leaves your body, it's fair game, period. When you look at the NBA, they issued a warning about flushing condoms down toilets. That's not for no reason, dude. But you're like, I'll never have child again. Yes, you will. It's called a testicular biopsy. It costs $3 or $4 grand. You go to an IVF clinic, you can go to high quality, affordable in Colorado Springs. They charge a very low number to get IVF. It's like $5 or $6 grand for IVF. No
Right.
problem. What you're doing is that you're trying to live a mindful life so you don't get trapped in the system. That's the issue. And you think it's not a big deal. Half of all African American men get caught in this triangle trade, in this child support system, and go to jail. Right. And they get felony stamped, can't work again. It's over. And they throw them in and out of jail. They don't care because they're incentivized to do it. That's right. The problem. If you're a man, you need to get a vasectomy at 18. If you're a woman, you need to freeze your eggs at 20 so you don't catch the wall. That's the secret. That's the secret to living a mindful life. If you want to become wealthy, that's the hidden secret.
Well, Michael, it was awesome. As usual, like I said, every time we talk, you are a wealth of knowledge. I envision us to be having a series of interviews. Once we get a few of them up and running, I'll set up a playlist so that people can go to them and watch them in order. So with that said, I want to thank everybody who's watched the video. If you found it insightful, if you found it educational, please feel free to like, subscribe, and share these videos on my channel, or from my channel, I should say. And remember, again, DDJ's Inferno is going to be on Sundays. I'll be putting out announcement videos once a week to let you guys know who the guest is for that particular day. And if I can do videos during the midweek, depending on the circumstances, I'll try to do that as well, in addition to making the content that I'm making. And finally, if you want to support my channel, feel free to support me through Patreon. Feel free to support me through Minds. Minds, you can, wire points to me so that I can share videos on Minds. And of course, if you're an Amazon Prime member, feel free to subscribe to my channel on Twitch. It costs you nothing and definitely helps me out. And of course, don't forget to check out The Feminist Lie. It was never about equality. And check out Cash and Prizes and Third Party Baby once they are complete. So the last question I have for you before we run away is, when it comes to those two documentaries, do you have a time frame set of when you want those to release, or are you still in conversations there?
Third Party Baby is fascinating because 20% of men walking in fertility clinics are single men getting babies, because that's kind of what led me in this direction too, is why is it that 20% of people walking out fertility clinics are single men? Because they're looking to bypass the family court. I'm not sure when Third Party is out. I've done about 4 or 5 interviews so far with them. Cash and Prizes, I'm trying to maybe the winter of 19. I'm hoping. It's hard to say of how far we go with it. When you go to my channel, I've only posted a couple things. I don't post a lot on purpose, but you should really check out the Melissa Isaac interview. She's a female attorney in Alabama. She tells you the reality of domestic violence. She talks about the reality of family courts. This is not affecting 0.1% of men. This is the majority. What she says is it's more common than not. If you're not a pedophile now or accused of being one, you will be.
Right.
Because
and I'll go ahead.
It's all about cash and prizes.
Exactly. And I'll go ahead and post links to that as well.
Yeah.
So
I would watch them now before they get pulled or whatever it is, because I won't leave them up forever, but you're going to like that one. You're going to like the Daddy Justice one. They are stunning. And all my stuff has research. So I'm going to have all my stuff. When I mention statistics or any kind of studies, you're going to see a pop-up that comes up and says, this is where you find it. This is not garbage science. This is all CDC, U.S. government, this study, that study, peer-reviewed. This is not garbage. This is real.
Now, I do have a question. When it comes to the videos that you post on your channel, do people have permission to mirror those, or do you plan on just pulling those back down yourself?
Eventually, I'm going to pull them. They're all in 4K, everything else. I don't know. My team has to debate about what we're going to do. If we're just gonna grab some more. We've spent about $250,000 so far in filming, and I'm heading off to Scandinavia for 3 weeks, to all these little countries in Scandinavia for obvious reasons, right?
Sounds rough.
Yeah, it sounds rough, but yeah, for 3 weeks to film, and we have these big debates about how we're going to get more funding, and we've self-funded so far. I think we're going to need 50 or 100 to finish it out. But either way, if we don't get the funding, I'm going to figure it out. But
Right.
the issue is that when people watch some of these things and see it, they explode inside and go, yes, this is exactly what happened to me. This is exactly what happened to my brother. This is exactly what happened to my father. I get it. Dude, drop me $10, drop me $100. I don't care. I mean, seriously, help out. I'll put you, I mean, it's going to be bigger than the red pill. It's going to be shot a lot better. It's going to be, this is the theory of everything. This is the theory of everything.
Right.
I'm filming the theory of everything. We're going at it. Send me some cash.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, exactly. And just to reiterate, I'll have the link to the GoFundMe. I'll have the link to the Patreon so people can go ahead and check that out. They can watch some of your interviews to get an idea of what you've done so far. Michael, it has been awesome having you on. I look forward to our future interviews together. And with that, thank you again for being here. Everybody, thank you for watching the video. And I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.